For Nonfiction November, the Discord group read Ben McIntyre's The Spy and the Traitor, the greatest espionage story of the Cold War. It's about Oleg Gordievsky. He's a KGB officer that became a mole for the British Secret Service back in the 80s during the height of the Cold War. Growing up as a kid during that Stranger Things era, I was pretty confident we were all going to die by nuclear annihilation. After reading this book, I find that Oleg Gordievsky may have in fact helped prevent that from happening. Fun fact, back in the 80s, that was the closest we'd ever gotten to midnight on the doomsday clock since it was implemented in 1953. We were 3 minutes out. And that was the closest until now, where we sit at 2 minutes to midnight. So that's great. Now, this isn't something I normally would have picked up, as it just narrowly beat the closest contender for our Nonfiction November read, which was Grayson Perry's The Descent of Man. I am sadly not well versed in spy novels. I've never read any Le Carré or Ludlum, Forsyth, or even Fleming. I mean, I'm clearly falling behind on my middle-aged dad reading list. If I stop to think about it, I've probably read more romance novels than spy novels, more meet-cutes than dead drops, more cosmopolitans as opposed to dirty martinis, Tuscan coast villas as opposed to Red Square Moscow. And so reading this, I was disappointed. There's an area, volcano, lair, evil henchman, or ejector seat in sight. And in fact, what becomes critical to Oleg Gordievsky's story is a Mars bar, a Safeway bag, and a soiled diaper. Okay, so I'm showing my hand a little bit here. Clearly my understanding of the genre is more informed by movies as opposed to real-life reportage. Cold War spycraft, as it's portrayed here, is more like The Office, Moscow edition. It's a series of bungles and missteps and carefully laid plans gone awry. I'll give you an example. Early in the book, the Danes are looking to turn Oleg, and they set out a honey trap. It's an urbane young Danish man at a West German diplomat's party. He's a little drunk, and he's very talkative, and he's chatting up Oleg and offers to take him out to the bar to continue the conversation. Oleg declines, much to the consternation of the Danes, who assume he's gay. And the reason why is because Oleg has purchased gay pornography that he's proudly displayed on the mantle in his flat in Stockholm, as you do. The thing is, he did buy it simply because he could. He was amazed by the freedoms enjoyed by the people there, as opposed to the sterile concentration camp like in Russia. Now, gay porn, odd choice. I mean, he could have maybe eaten sushi or taken up salsa dancing. I don't know, but you do as you do. On the other hand, we have an MI5 agent looking to trade secrets with the Russians. He's dissatisfied with work and he's looking for some sort of outside validation. And so he puts together a package crammed filled with confidential British intelligence and drops it off at the London KGB residential chief's home, with the promise of more to come. Now the Russian chief is having none of it. He's positive this whole thing is a dangle. Now, Western intelligence looking to provide false or misleading information, or at the very least, this just chicken feed, vague and unhelpful information. And so despite repeated attempts by this would-be traitor who is sitting on this exceptional hoard of British intelligence, the Russians completely ignore him and will have none of it. But the story here is about Oleg Gordievsky. He is eventually turned, at badminton, known the world over as the international sport of spies, of course. Now, Ben McIntyre is considered one of the finest contemporary military historians of all time. He's written about Eddie Chapman, a British double agent working under Nazi Germany during World War II, as well as Kim Philby, a Russian double agent working with British counterintelligence during the height of the Cold War. But for McIntyre, Oleg Gordievsky is in the pantheon of world-changing spies. He may very well be responsible for calming international fears and avoiding nuclear holocaust, as well as paving the way for glasnost and warming relations between the West and Russia. Oleg worked as an agent with British intelligence for 11 years when he is suddenly called back to Moscow. And that's where the book opens. The KGB counterintelligence agents have broken into Oleg's Moscow flat. They put wiring behind the wallpaper and the baseboards. They've put mics in the telephone, cameras in the light fixtures, and they've lightly dusted his clothes and shoes with radioactive dust so they can track him with a Geiger counter. Oleg has been exposed and the noose is tightening. And the stakes are pretty high. Earlier this year, we saw what happened with Russian double agents when Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia were exposed to a Cold War-era nerve agent and put into critical condition. The Russians have a very distinct way of dealing with double agents. This was a great read, meticulously researched. McIntyre interviewed all the British agents that worked with Oleg, and even a few Russian ones. And it just makes for this great fictional romp as opposed to a dry historical recounting of facts. Entire conversations are played out. Extravagant details are recalled decades later. And it just really makes a readable book. And I loved all the little details. A lot of the information that Oleg provided British intelligence couldn't be used without exposing him. And some of his biggest contributions are things as simple as telling Ronald Reagan how he should address Russian paranoia over the Star Wars program, or how Margaret Thatcher should carry herself at Yuri Andropov's funeral. Oleg is like a Cold War Cyrano, an international wingman, brokering the eventual meet-cute between the not quite ready to trust, hurt before United States and the shy, blushing, coming out of her shell Soviet Union, who's ready to tear down her walls and let others in. The whole story, despite being a Cold War-era spy novel, is relatively bloodless. There is no snapping of necks in darkened Soviet alleyways or rooftop snipers with night vision goggles. It reads more like a cozy international thriller, and it's made all the more compelling for that reason. Now McIntyre does wear his British allegiance on his sleeve. British agents are all shown as competent, fiercely loyal agents with stiff upper lips and unflappable resolve. Meanwhile, American and Russian agents are shown as clock-watching, ass-covering careerists, narcissistic opportunists, petty drunkards, and lazy field workers. But this was a great introduction to a new-to-me literary genre. So by the time this gets out, NaNoWriMo will have finished. Congratulations to all of you that made it to the end this year. I still don't want to read what you wrote. So next month, we're all together reading Ezia Duzhin's Washington Black on the Discord book club. Come join us if you'd like. I'm looking forward to this one. And that's about it for me this week. I hope you all have a great week of reading, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.